Again, thank you all for coming. As I said, I'm the director of COSEE California, and COSEE is an acronym, Centers for Ocean Sciences Education Excellence. The COSEE program is funded by the National Science Foundation. There are 12 centers around the country that comprise the National COSEE network. And each center, each of those 12 centers is comprised of at least 3 different institutions. A research institution, a formal education institution, and an informal education institution. And this project that we're embarking on starting today is the first activity of what NSF is calling a new collaboration with an existing center. So the University of Hawaii system is now collaborating with COSEE California. And this is the first official activity of that new collaboration, and that is to launch the teaching of a course that we've developed called Communicating Ocean Sciences at any of several campuses around the state of Hawaii and hopefully beyond. So I just want to share with you a little bit about what COSEE is first, and I know many of you are probably very familiar with COSEE, with the COSEE program, but I just want to do a very quick overview of what COSEE is as a context in which the rest of our work together sits. And I just want to note, and I told some people this yesterday, that one of the distinguishing characteristics of COSEE is that it's anomalous at the National Science Foundation. Most like 90% or more of the education efforts funded by NSF are funded out of one distinct directorate called the Directorate of Education and Human Services. COSEE is funded by a research directorate, by the Director of Geosciences in the Division of Ocean Sciences. And that means that research scientists are giving up their research dollars to support and promote public awareness and education and outreach related to critical concepts in ocean sciences. And as a result, we're focusing on creating collaborations between research scientists and educators. That's really one of the themes that runs throughout the whole COSEE network. So let me just share with you a little bit about the COSEE program. NSF created this program to address these well-recognized challenges that we've been facing for, well, my entire professional life. The general population does not really understand the critical role that the ocean plays in our everyday lives. Oceanographic discoveries are not systematically or regularly translated into educational materials or programs. They are idiosyncratically occurring in education programs. There's a room full of people here that are teaching about the ocean in a variety of settings. But if we look at the whole education system in the United States, these things are systematically missing, disproportionately compared to other disciplines of science. Communities of color and underrepresented communities are even more disproportionately underrepresented in the ocean sciences than any other discipline of science. And there's a lack of coordination and sort of systematic organization of ocean sciences education nationwide. So some examples that we often cite are that in the National Science Education Standards, the word ocean hardly appears. These are standards developed by the National Academy of Sciences. They're excellent. They promote inquiry, the best types of inquiry-based science education in the K-12 environment, but the word ocean just doesn't occur. And as a consequence, in all of the state standards, each of our 49 of the 50 states in the United States has their own unique science standards, and in all 49 sets of those standards, the word ocean hardly occurs. And as a result of the ocean being missing from the standards, there's not a representation of ocean science concepts in curriculum and instructional materials or in assessments. And even in the informal world, what we see is that, of course, aquariums represent and teach about the ocean, but science museums and science centers really don't. It's left to the aquariums to teach. So you can go through a science museum, a science center, a natural history museum, and often not find much about the ocean in those settings. So COSEE was established. These centers have been funded by the National Science Foundation. NSF asked the centers not only to address the funded work that they had proposed, but also to work together collaboratively across centers and form a national network. So the mission of the National COSEE Network is to spark and nurture collaborations among scientists and educators to advance ocean discovery and make known the vital role that the ocean plays in our lives. And you'll see in that mission statement sort of the dual roles, that through education we're trying to advance ocean research. We're trying to make the public more aware and more supportive of the work that scientists are doing, especially, of course, in the context of climate change and all the things that are happening in the last 10 years. But in addition to that, we're trying to achieve this broad goal of ocean literacy, making people aware of the importance of the ocean in all of our lives. These are the three core values of the National COSEE Network: leadership, collaboration, and innovation. And you'll see these themes recurring in almost all of our work. I hope you'll see little glimmers of all three of those things in the work that we're going to do in the next 2 days. But we're trying to play a leadership role. We're trying to be collaborative and inclusive and to involve people from a lot of different cultures within the ocean sciences community. And by cultures, I'm talking about professional cultures, academic, informal, K-12, etc., and also cultures in the more commonly used form of that word. We're trying to involve underrepresented communities, Native communities, indigenous people, etc., which is what brought us here working with you in this new collaboration, and I'll say more about that in a moment. Right now there are 12 centers located mostly around the coastlines of the country, from Alaska and the far northwest down the west coast, across the Gulf Coast and up the east coast, and one lonely center in the Great Lakes region, in the middle of the country. And we're hoping that in the next several years, next 2 years, we're hoping that there will be a center, a fully funded center in the Pacific, maybe like here. And we're hoping that there might be a center or two in the center of the country in landlocked areas that will help us to reach the large population that's not along a coastline. There are many examples of the work that we've done together. The first centers were formed in 2002. And so we're heading toward 10 years. It's been about 6, 7 years of work together. We're developing an approach that we're doing some research on and documenting and evaluating related to strategies, of developing effective strategies for brokering partnerships between researchers and educators. We're seeing more and more that scientists, of course, are required to include broader impact statements in their NSF proposals. They're required to have education public outreach components of their NASA proposals. NOAA is now requiring researchers to include education components. So there's a need on the part of scientists to have educational partners, and vice versa. The bar has been raised in the education community to become more rigorous, to include more cutting-edge science, to address current issues like climate change and acidification, etc. So educators like me desperately need the involvement of research scientists to help us sort of bump the level of our work to that higher bar. We've been working since 2002 on this ocean literacy project. I put some pamphlets around your table. How many people are familiar with this? Have you seen this before? Oh, good. More than half. That's great. I mentioned that the ocean is not well represented in science standards around the country. And when we whined and complained about that, people often asked us, well, okay, so what should be in there? And there really was no response. And this is the response. There are 7 things that we think every kid ought to know about the ocean by the time they get out of 12th grade. And several hundred scientists and educators and government agency people worked for a couple of years to boil down all of our research and knowledge and curriculum and textbooks and etc., into 7 big ideas, 7 principles of ocean literacy. And then each of those 7 principles is comprised of a small handful of fundamental concepts that elaborate those principles. So when we develop new education programs, they're often aligned to these principles and concepts. When states are revising their science standards, as I understand Hawaii is, we're hoping that this pamphlet makes its way to the table and that some or all of these 7 principles end up somewhere in the 13-year experience that students have before they get out of high school. And this is a direct result of the COSEE network working collaboratively with many other agencies and organizations around the country. And then the program that brought us here together today, Communicating Ocean Sciences, is now a national program. It was developed by COSEE California in Berkeley, but the course is being taught in about 25 universities around the country now, including in 9 of the 12 centers, the COSEE centers. So this is starting to look like a national course that we're hoping that many, many graduate students and undergraduates will take before they finish their formal education. So, finally, in this little portion, COSEE California is a collaborative partnership between these 5 institutions. Lawrence Hall of Science at UC Berkeley is an informal education institution. We're a public science center that is part of the UC Berkeley campus. So Catherine and I are UC Berkeley employees, not faculty, but we're academic employees within the informal science institution. Scripps Institution of Oceanography, you've probably heard of that. San Diego Unified School District is our partner K-12 school district. College of Exploration is a distance learning organization that helps us to put on online virtual meetings, workshops, planning spaces, conferences, etc. And now our most recent partner, as a result of our 2008 grant from NSF, is the University of Hawaii. And we're extremely excited to be starting on this. The 3 main initiatives that our center is focusing on are, I've mentioned, the Ocean Literacy Campaign, Communicating Ocean Sciences courses, and this 3rd initiative that Scripps is leading, called Teaching Ocean Sciences in the 21st Century Classroom. Scripps, working with several other partners and with us, are developing some online tools for helping middle school classrooms to take virtual field trips in science labs and to have access to real and someday real-time data to look at and analyze and draw conclusions from. So we're hoping that those tools will be available in the very near future. Okay, so that's just, anybody have any questions about what COSEE is or things that you heard about COSEE before you came in today that you were unclear about?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Where's that wave taking picture?
Sorry, I don't know. Probably somewhere here. Doesn't that make sense? Can I just say here? I don't know. Not sure. Cool. Any other questions about COSEE? Okay. All right. So we're gonna the next 2 days we're going to be focusing on this university course that we've created at Berkeley, sharing with you how we've taught it and documented the course so that it's available to other faculty and informal educators to use. And we're going to share the course with you by modeling as much as we can exactly the way that we teach the course. And when we teach the course, we do as much as we can to model for the students what we'd like them to be doing when they're communicating about ocean science in the practicum of the course. The course involves classroom sessions and a practicum where students go out into the field and they're actually teaching ocean science in a variety of settings. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that it's such a short, finite period that we have contact with these students. They're not education students, they're science students, and we got them for one course once in their life. So we have to use every second of the course in the most efficient and effective way possible, which means that we can't talk about stuff that you should be doing when you're doing it. we need to be doing the stuff that we want you to be doing, so that you have the experience of hearing about it and doing it and reflecting on it simultaneously. So right this second, we're going to start doing things like we would do in the course. And the first day of the course, we want students to get to know each other and share something about themselves and their prior knowledge and prior experience. So I'm going to ask you in about 5 seconds to stand up and come up here to the front of the room and make 2 lines, shoulder-to-shoulder lines, one line facing the other. And each person, if we hopefully have an even number, each person should be facing directly across one other person. If we have an odd number, we'll deal with a trio at the end. Okay? So if you could all just come on up and form 2 lines, shoulder to shoulder. Okay, so here's the way this is going to work. I'm going to pose a question or give you a prompt. And I'm going to give you about a minute or so, maybe a little longer, to talk with the partner directly across from you about that prompt. So here's sort of the ground rules. First of all, before you start talking, please introduce yourself to your partner. Second of all, well, not yet, just a second. Okay. Go ahead. You go ahead. Introduce yourself. Okay. So now that you're introduced, I'm going to give you this prompt. Now the rest of the rules are, first of all, please talk a little bit softly because everybody's going to be talking at once. That's one thing. Second of all, if you're the first person to respond to the prompt, please make a relatively short comment, because we only have about a minute or a minute and a half, and I want both people to have a chance to respond. Okay? And then, well, I'm going to give you a little while, and then I'll sort of raise my hand, and I'll say, okay, can everybody stop, please? And if you could just stop talking as quickly as possible, that would be great. Okay, so here's your first prompt. I'd like you to talk with your partner about the ways that you communicate about ocean sciences in your job. Okay, how do you communicate about ocean sciences in your job, and who is it that you're communicating with most of the time? Okay, go ahead. Okay, so now, would anyone like to share something that your partner told you that you think might be of interest to the rest of us? Something that your partner told you about how they communicate and who they communicate with in their job. Go ahead, tell us who your partner is and then share something.
My partner is Kate, and she works with teachers largely. And part of what she does is she teaches in the classroom, but the cool thing that she does is actually takes them out to sea and tries to teach them about ocean sciences in the water, on the water, and hopes that they will then get spark of interest and take it back to the classroom.
Wow. So how many, so that's great, Kate. Wow, that's fantastic. How many people communicate about ocean science by providing people an experience in ocean science or in the ocean? So Kate, you're not the only one. Wow, look at that. I'd say that's tending on unusual to have that many people who actually take people in the field and use that as a primary form of communication. Anybody else have something to share that the partner told you?
I got one.
Yep.
Dan, he works at the aquarium here, and he said that he communicates often only at the middle school level, even with adults, on ocean science information.
Okay. So you figure regardless of whether your audience is middle school or older, that they're probably about a middle school level of content?
There is no average visitor, but yeah, if you had to make an average visitor, it's more that level, yeah.
Okay, great. Yes?
I'd like to introduce Carl Stephens again, and he is a professor of oceanography at Kauai Community College and often has a traditional education forum where the students are there to learn about the ocean. But he said he also communicates ocean sciences sometimes on the rail. We actually sail on the same boat, but that he is educating our crew, and I just thought that was interesting that a lot of our experiences are not in the traditional education form, but the random person you meet on the street, and there's your teachable moment. Carl does it. Good job, Carl.
Fantastic. So we have 3 people so far that have shared something. We have somebody who's working with teachers in a formal environment, somebody that's working in an aquarium in an informal environment, and a researcher who works with colleagues as well as encounters the general public. A pretty good spread for 3 out of 3. Okay, so that's good for right now. Now what I'd like you to do, Carly, that's your Carly? Okay, I'd like Carly to take a step back and go around to the end of the line that way, and everybody else to take 1 step to your right, with your back to me. And here's your second. Okay, so this time I'm going to give you a prompt. After I give you the prompt, please introduce yourself to your partner and start talking about the prompt. And when I want you to stop this time, instead of screaming, I'm going to use the touch of silence. So I'm going to touch you two on your shoulder, and I'd like you to turn and touch the person next to you on their shoulder. And as you feel the touch of silence, please stop talking and touch the person next to you. Your second prompt is, I'd like you to talk with your partner about learning in a K-12 environment versus learning in an informal environment